Hey, everybody, welcome back to Beautifully Complex. I am really excited today to have a conversation with Wendy Snyder about behavior struggles, how we handle those behavior struggles, and even about approaching discipline consciously and just, I think, moving with intention so that we can be the parent that we want to be and also the parent that our kids need us to be. Wendy, I'm so happy to have you here. Will you start by just introducing yourself and let everybody know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Penny. It's an honor to be here and get to record again. We just recorded, we had you on the Fresh Start Family Show podcast
Yeah.
a few weeks ago. So it's been such a joy to get to know you and the work you're doing in your community. So, yeah, hello, everybody. I'm Wendy Snyder. I'm a positive parenting educator and family life coach and founder of Fresh Start Family, which is a worldwide education and coaching platform where we help families really build up their parenting toolkit. So it can be kind of chock full of firm and kind connection based parenting strategies. And we find that when parents do that, they bring more peace into their home, which brings more peace into the world. And I really have a heart. I have a tendency to attract a lot of families, and I love teaching families who have at least one strong willed child because and in our work, those are the kids that usually lovingly call us into growth and provide the opportunity for us to really look at how we want to influence these little humans because they are a higher degree of difficulty. And in my own life, my own beautiful, strong-willed little girl has completely changed my entire life by the season when I found this work. She was a toddler. She's now 16, but she is the reason why I do this work. And she lovingly invited me in to heal and grow. And before before I had her, I didn't have any idea that I would struggle with like highly reactive behavior and perfectionist tendencies and overpowering issues, like all the things that came out once I was put in charge of raising a small human soul that happened to have a beautiful, strong will.
Yeah, I love that. I love that and I'm sure you've worked on this perspective, right? I'm sure you didn't start there.
Yes. No.
It's been a journey, but yeah, our kids really change us and change our perspective on the world and teach us things that we really needed to know, but sometimes just don't come naturally. I started out as a very empathetic person, but I'm far, far more empathetic from having
Yeah.
the kid that I had than I would have been otherwise. And just really try to walk into understanding wherever we go, whoever we meet, being open to the fact that I don't know their story. And,
Yeah.
we all have differences, right? So we learn from our kids big
We
time.
do. We do. They often can be our biggest catalyst for change if we allow them to be, right? If we don't reject that invitation.
Yes. Yeah. So let's talk about leaning into the kids that we have. I think that's part of the conversation
Yeah.
here that we're going to have because we can resist. We can try to maintain our control and our power. And often that's not really possible. So it's just a lot of friction. And that's not where we want to be in our parenting journey. So, how do we sort of step into it in a different mindset?
It's a great question, right? So for me, it's really, I think for me, it's been a journey of realizing that there's nothing wrong, air quotes, wrong with my kid or wrong with me through all of the seasons, all of the behaviors, right? So I first found this work when Stella was a toddler and I had just had my second. And I just thought I was going to lose my mind. I was like, all of a sudden, I was yelling, I was grabbing wrists too tight, I was slamming doors, I was punishing this little human, you know, you name it. Timeouts, a bunch of twisted books told me I needed to spank her. I tried everything and it just was not working. And thank God I got the invitation to actually do a program at her preschool and taught me just all these new ways of seeing misbehavior or behavior,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like seeing seeing the challenging behavior in a different way that I had been taught to see it. And so once I started to see her behavior as just communication and realize that she was a human soul that had been perfectly designed to seek power. And that probably was going to set her up to be a really great leader one day. And I had been given this opportunity to mentor this next one of the next leaders, next generation of leaders. That started to help me shift my perspective. I also started to learn that when I had those highly reactive patterns, or when I didn't know what to do with her in the moments when I would tell her to stop pulling the dog's tail and she would pull it harder, or I would say go right and she'd go left, right? Like that was pretty much from the beginning the tone that Stella carried. She was just always like this incredibly determined, persistent, like confident child. Really had like a strong vision of what she wanted, no matter if that was like eating what she wanted to eat for dinner, or how she wanted to dress, or whether she wanted to pick up her toys or not. She would just had this very confident air about her. But like when I started to realize that when I didn't know what to do, that was actually just part of the process of being a human parent, not that something was wrong with me, then kind of the light started to return to my day. And I realized that I just needed to learn how to influence her in a way that was actually going to work, because strong-willed kids, in my opinion and my experience, are notorious for rejecting that classic overpowering model. Mm-hmm. They just will revolt against it. They will rebel against it. And it takes an incredibly frustrating amount of fear and force, which most of us realize we don't want to live a life where we're constantly trying to scare our kid into submission or make them listen. And so it just turned into a journey that now I just see when she has behavior that's really challenging. Like we just worked through something really intense last night, and we'll continue to work through it over the weekend. She's 16 now. I just see it as an opportunity to teach and mentor. And with this work, when you're incredibly connected to your kids, it honestly turns out to feel like an honor, and every single moment of discipline turns into like a uniting thing with your child. And it's just wild that we're 14 years in now, and I'm just in awe of like the connection piece that helps us handle the imperfect moments of parenting. That it doesn't matter if you're a PhD, if you're a life coach like me, if you're spreading light in the world in any way possible, Penny, it's like there's no perfection in homes. And when you're able to see behaviors as just opportunities to teach, and yes, challenges to work through, but they're just part of normal life. Nothing wrong with us, nothing wrong with our kids. They're just another day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you resist will persist. That's one of my parenting mantras, right? It's so true. The more we push, the more many kids will push back, and it makes it really difficult. But what I love in what you were talking about is that you were reframing. You were changing strong-willed, stubborn, obstinate, words like that we often use to describe behavior. And you said determined, confident, and persistent. And those are much more positive ways to look at that type of behavior, right? Because then we are in that mindset that there is something here worth fighting for. There are points to this child's character, and sometimes behavior isn't actually reflective of the child's character, but we're seeing that there are things here to work with, right? We're not just seeing it as negative. We're also seeing that positive flip side. Dr. Hallowell calls it mirror traits. He takes traits of ADHD and he finds the mirror traits within them. And that's exactly what I was hearing in what you were saying. It reminded me of that.
Yeah.
And it's so, so important for our kids, for their self-confidence, right? But also for our mindset as parents as we step into those challenging situations.
Yep. And in my experience, it's usually, not always, but usually a life skill that we could use some strengthening on. And it may show up differently, but there's a life skill that we can share with our children. Oftentimes, if you really approach it with like a humility and a curiosity, it's amazing to me how I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. Like the one with my daughter, I'm like, for sure. Like I struggle with some of the things that like lead to more anxiety in my life that she's struggling with, like when it comes to screens. But then my little guy, he got like a note sent home just this morning about talking in class. He's 13. He's not so little. So for that one, it's like I kind of have to look a little bit and I'm like, oh, well, you know what? Maybe I do interrupt sometimes, but I just find it has actually become joyful and a part of the journey to look within and say, I wonder where I could use some strengthening with that life skill, whether it's self-control or emotional literacy, right? Like flying off the handle when you're upset about something, not getting what you want, frustration tolerance. I've found it incredibly empowering over the years to start seeing them as actual mirrors and just start asking without shame or blame. I wonder if there's anything we could share here as I'm supporting this child to have behavior tomorrow that's going to feel better for them, better for the community, better for their school, whatever it may be. But like, I wonder where I can share with them and help make them understand they're not alone, because a lot of times they aren't.
Yeah, but they feel it. They feel alone, you know, especially when they're struggling. I remember my son coming home from school in high school, maybe ninth grade, and he said, there is no one else like me in my entire school. And I said, Bud, there are a lot of differences, and you have kind of this constellation of things that make school really hard. But there are like almost 3,000 kids in your school, and I know that other kids are struggling in similar ways, at least. You just haven't met them yet. You just haven't had the opportunity to connect with them yet. But that's, you know, it feels so isolating when it feels like everybody else is doing okay, when it feels like for everybody else things are easy. And yeah, sharing stories is really, really powerful. And I'm a firm believer in being very imperfect in front of our kids, showing them that we are absolutely human as well. We make mistakes, and showing them how to deal with those mistakes or how to deal with big emotions. And so when we share stories from our own past, as you're talking about, then, you know, we're just, again, showing them that we are human too. And everybody makes mistakes. Everybody walks through some struggles sometimes, and it's how we deal with it. And I think, you know, we are going to talk about handling behavior challenges with dignity. But I think just, you know, sharing that humanity in ourselves is giving them dignity in what their struggle is.
Yeah. And then when you approach it like that and help them feel like they're not alone, which is that basic need of belonging, right? Like when they feel like they're safe and they do belong, even if it's just with you, right? Like, and it's just within the home, like, and when they step into the school, like Stella right now, it's like, you know, she steps into high school and 99% of her friends are vaping every second. I mean, most of her friends are getting hammered every second, like full stoners. I mean, it's just like, it is wild. In Southern California, the normative, like, you know, all that kind of stuff is, but you may feel alone in other places, but at least if you can bring in that belonging in the home to say, I get you, you're not an alien, you make sense to me, I've struggled with the same things before, it will relax their nervous system. And then they are able to actually get into that part of the brain that is open to the creative solutions, open to being counseled or mentored, right? Like that's the dream I think we all want, is for our children to feel safe with us actually mentoring them. And if we're being honest, most kids don't. By the time they're in their second decade, they really tune parents out because they just feel like they're going to get lectured or punished or shamed or even rescued, right? Like you hear a lot of kids like they don't actually tell their parents what's happening because their parents will rush into rescue mode. So it's interesting, like getting to that point where it's just that deep sense of belonging and saying, you're not alone and we're going to figure this out. And then all of a sudden they're like, all right, I'll listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, that relationship is so important. And it really does make a huge difference in how much our kids let us guide them, how much they let us be a part of what is happening for them, which we want to be. Because there are a lot of things going on that we need to help them to navigate. Let's talk a little bit about how we handle challenging behavior with dignity, because I think, as human beings, we all get triggered. And we talk here on Beautifully Complex so much about our kids getting triggered, what that looks like, why it's happening, what we should do with it. We don't talk as much about ourselves getting triggered, but we're human beings.
Yeah.
And like when our kid is blowing up and screaming hateful things at us, we're naturally, biologically, we're going to get triggered. So how do we approach that situation feeling like we still have dignity? Because I think a lot of people would think, well, if I'm just really passe about this horrible thing happening, then that makes me look like I'm a bad parent, or I don't have control, right? But I don't think that's true. So how do we really push through that and feel like we're still maintaining our own dignity?
Yeah. Oh, I love the word dignity. I just was looking at the definition. The state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect, a self-respect, a sense of pride in oneself. So when it comes to dignity, I really think of just seeing our kids of worthy of being treated, really like usually we'd treat a neighbor, a friend, our grandparent, right? Like we teach about compassionate discipline, and there's specifically like 4 R's that we would design logical consequences around. And one of them is it has to be respectful, and it has to be related. There's a few other things, like in order for it to be a logical consequence versus a punishment. And I always teach in the way of like, hey, if you're wondering if it's respectful, ask yourself, would you do it to your grandma? Would you do it to your rabbi? Would you say it to your neighbor or your pastor? If you wouldn't, then it's probably not respectful. But like our children deserve the same respect and dignity as adults and other people in our lives, but it's been normalized that they don't, right? Like they're supposed to just listen and do what they're told. And the other piece of this that comes to my mind is just is just understanding our nervous system. Our nervous system is beautifully, perfectly designed to keep us safe, and it gets conditioned over time to see what we know as safe. And many of us were just raised in autocratic homes where, if you challenged the rules, if you made mistakes, if you showed any type of imperfection when it comes to disrespect of your authority figure in your home, there was a price to pay. And it often includes danger. And whether that's like physical harm, justified as good discipline through many circles, or whether it was emotional harm of like shame, right? Lecturing, what's wrong with you? Like I know in my house, the classic was like, shame on you, what's wrong with you? And man, I did not realize, I'm 47 now, the last 3 years I've been working on letting that go fully. It is so sticky in my brain. It is so sticky. So my nervous system like knows that well. And again, it's just designed to keep me safe. It'll always choose like a comfortable hell over an uncomfortable heaven. So even though rationally we don't want to come down on our kids and shame and lecture them and say things to them that we're probably later going to feel guilty about, but it snaps back into that place because that's what we watched happen for 18 years. So that's kind of what we know, right? Like if you were to let a child slide and you were to show empathy and compassion, then there's just a lot of fear that'll come in of like judgment. What if I'm doing this wrong? I'm letting this kid get away with it. I'm being permissive. And so for us just to understand, that's just our nervous system trying to keep us safe. And it's just a signal that we're dysregulated. And if we can slow down and signal safety, that we're actually safe. Most behaviors, as challenging as they are, most of them, Penny, right, are not 4-alarm fires.
Yep.
Sometimes they are.
Like it.
And a lot of the times they're not, but it doesn't matter if it's spilled milk or rolled eyes or a kid saying, I hate you. It feels to our nervous system like a bear is chasing us and we're going to die. Because when we were a kid, we remember, like, that's one of my biggest memories of my childhood is being chased around the fireplace with a paddle. Like a very firm memory. So if I made a mistake, that now when I make a mistake, I was just in traffic court last week. The same feeling in my body revved up of like, uh-oh, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm not going to get off for this ticket. Thank God the cop didn't show up and I got off. Woohoo. But the feeling, my nervous system still reacted the same way. So the point is, it's just understanding that and realizing that the more we learn to signal safety, to slow down, even if it means going to the bathroom for 2 minutes, getting a glass of water, we teach what's called a pause button. But like just working with your body, that's kind of what I'm finding now and I'm teaching about a lot lately. That's actually the ticket to changing your thought patterns. Like you can't just change your thought patterns until you work with your body and repave the neural pathways is what I'm finding.
Yeah, you froze there for a minute. Sorry. I'll fix that later.
Okay.
Yeah, I too also talk a lot about the nervous system and how we are instinctually getting triggered. We are getting the signal from our body that we are not safe, that things are not okay, and emotions are very, very powerful. So when I start to feel bad because somebody's yelling at me or saying something hurtful or whatever it is, that comes from a real place. It's not me choosing, right? Like we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to give ourselves grace. We are wired to respond in a way that things are coming at us. And we have to work to overpower that. But as you were talking about, like all of our lives, our nervous system, our brains have been wired to respond to certain things in certain ways. So if we were parented through fear, when we have other fear, we get that same sort of trigger in our bodies. I've talked about this before on the podcast. My son had a lot of really intense school avoidance and refusal. And the first one, he literally got out of my car. He was walking toward the building and he turned around and he ran in between my car and the car behind me as we were moving. So he ran in front of a moving car, screaming like he'd been hit by said car, even though he had not. And that was fourth grade. And we had different ways that showed up at different times throughout his schooling. And even now when I think about it, my body reacts very strongly. When I think about dropping him off somewhere at age 21, my nervous system gets triggered and it says, uh-oh, what if this happens again? And it hasn't happened in a long time, but it just illustrates the depth of what you're talking about. Our bodies hold on to these things and they try to tell us to act in a certain way when we feel a certain way. And we have to learn, just as much as we're trying to teach our kids, how to interpret those signals, how to know when we are truly safe or not, and what to do with that. And I think that's part of how we show up in a way that allows us to be calm, in a way that allows us to be more rational when our kids aren't. We can meet them with that, as you were saying, respect, right? I mean, that's really what it is. That understanding, it helps us to meet them with that respect.
It's so true. Fear and the feeling of being scared is such a fascinating, beautiful emotion that a lot of people think is like, we'll label it as a negative or bad, but it's actually where bravery and courage is born, right? And to like do things differently as a parent, even to raise a human soul, to put that much love into a person that you then release into the wild. And like, I was just talking to someone about the other day of like, it's really scary. Like, what if something happens to them? Like every day, you actually are feeling quite often, if you're a parent, scared that something's going to happen to your child. Like the thought comes across but what bravery to like, be like, and I'm still going to have a human soul. I'm going to raise it. I'm going to put all my love into it. And I can't control its life, right? Like it's bravery, it's courage, but like we don't get to be brave, courageous human beings without feeling scared. And yeah, you said it so well. It's like the journey to know what to do with that and just to be able to work with our body to decipher what is like a fear that we really want to stop, drop, and actually create safety. Right. And then what's other times when it's just more like the alarm's going off, but we get with our rational developed brain to tell ourselves we're okay. We're gonna use our own ability to like signal the safety versus the body like going into panic mode. So such interesting work, you know?
Yeah. And gosh, you know, I've been on this journey for, I don't know, my son was diagnosed, lots of math, almost 16 years ago.
Okay.
It took me many, many, many years before I even started learning about the nervous system.
Yeah.
Like probably 10. It's more
Yeah.
recent. You know,
I'm just like 6 months. I've been doing this for 14 years and
really
just 6 months for me. And it's all of a sudden just everything's clicking.
Yeah. It's just crazy. It's just crazy how much sort of the light bulb goes off, right? Like we just walk through life believing what other people tell us, believing the experiences that we had as a kid, right? Believing what society says we need to do as a parent, as an adult, whatever that is. And we don't recognize that so much of what we do, how we feel, is coming from our body. And if we can just connect to that, and if we can teach our kids to connect to that, how different everything can be, right? How different that experience is going to be for all of us.
Yeah.
For sure. So I know that you have a free gift for everyone listening, and I'm going to link that up in the show notes, and I'm going to give everybody the exact address for that in just a moment. But do you want to tell us a little bit about what they can get that was going to help them to, one, learn more about you and your work, but also to help them on this parenting journey?
Yeah. So thank you, Penny. I would love to gift your community what we call our Quick Start Learning Bundle, which will help them just get started with what we teach on how to work with strong-willed kids in a way where you are really actually enjoying parenthood with them and getting out of the thought pattern that we need to change them or make them comply, but instead work with their natural design, help them become the leader that they're probably destined to be. And so that comes with a printable learning guide, a PDF, and a workshop with me. That's a 60-minute, really powerful workshop. And they can learn more and find out information over at freshstartfamilyonline.com/power, or just DM me the word freedom on Instagram. I'm at Fresh Start Wendy. Come find me over there too. I love to do teachings over there. And that word freedom, if you DM me, I'll get you into that Quick Start Bundle that way too.
Awesome. And I will have it linked up in the show notes. And those are going to be found at parentingadhdandautism.com/264 for episode 264. I just want to thank you, Wendy, for sharing some of your time with us, your experience. You know, sharing your story can be very vulnerable, and you're showing up and doing this work in the world that is making a difference for all of us, and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you, Penny, for having me. I appreciate and love the work that you're doing in the world so much too. So this has been really fun chatting today.
Yep, and I will see everyone on the next episode. Take good care.